Hi everyone, I'm back with another video from the Season 28 PTR. This time I want to talk about the Witch Doctors. And it's not looking all that great. So I've tried out Arakia and Mundunugu. Witch Doctor in general has not received any changes. But I just wanted to get a bit of a benchmark, get a bit of a feel for their builds again, especially the top two builds, I guess, with those two. Now, there is one build in particular that will be very strong in pushing at the very high end next season for Witch Doctors, which is Zunimasa. So Zunimasa generally has this kind of super high end scaling where it is a very squishy build. It needs really, really good gear, really good gameplay, really crazy rift, and then it pops off. But it's not really anything that is like really used by almost anyone basically. So as I mentioned, this is a very high end thing, but it will probably land in S tier because of how powerful it can be. Now that being said, Arakia is usually the go-to choice for most Witch Doctor players these days, as far as I know. It is like the most recently buffed build for Witch Doctors in Season 24 or something like that. And it works kind of just fine in my opinion. So you can see this here, this is GR on 113 speeds. The main issue that the build has is that it's simply not really that fast. So this tier would be acceptable if we could do it in like 2 minutes maybe, or 2.5 or so. But these runs are regularly 3 minutes or longer because the build is just so slow paced. You have to throw these spiders and they have to stack up, and then they have to stack this belt mechanic, and then you start dealing damage. On top of this infest mechanic that you also have to play around. But I mean, this is something that makes the build unique, which is fine in my opinion. But it just slows down the whole thing. And if we are going these low tiers compared to other classes, it needs to be faster. Or this build needs to be buffed a bit to be a bit higher tiers. But the problem is that buffing the build realistically makes it pretty OP at the high end, especially as a Rift Guardian killer. Arakia is actually the strongest build in the game right now. You might actually see some groups running with Witch Doctor because of this insanely high single target damage that the build brings through the insane like triple dipping of mechanics, especially with attack speed, especially if you combine this with speed pylons and the frenzy shrines that you could get from the potion powers or just in the rift even. And yeah, this build can go really crazy on the boss. So in GR 150 with a decently built Rift Guardian killer setup, you can melt bosses in sub 1 minute with not even high paragon. And it even beats the Rathma Necromancer as far as I know. So there is definitely a bit of potential for group play for Witch Doctors as an Arakia Witch Doctor, which also makes it difficult to actually buff this build in my opinion. And here comes the Mundunugu Witch Doctor. So this is a build that I personally really like. So this has seen its peak in Season 20 when it was newly introduced. And I think it's still like one of the coolest playstyles in the entire game. Not so much for farming, but especially for solo pushing, where this is like a very tricky build to play, and it really rewards like a good execution of the playstyle. So when you try to farm with this, it has the issue that it simply cannot really deal with small monster packs or single targets. You have like no damage whatsoever on the boss, but you have this insanely high AoE damage against many targets. So this is how the build works in general, which in my opinion is okay with the power level it has. But again, if you try to farm with this, it just doesn't feel good. You cannot really finish off those elites, which is like the main thing to finish. And also the boss, even on this tier, can take like upwards of half a minute or so. So it has kind of the reverse problem of Arakia. You destroy everything and then the boss doesn't die. Versus Arakia, where you have to throw 100 spiders to actually kill anything, and then the boss melts in 2 seconds. So now we have to combine those concepts basically. But this is what we have. Realistically, I think it would be nice to give a little buff to the Witch Doctors, especially towards the Mundunugu set. I think Arakia is already, okay, maybe a slight bump for farming in some way, especially with more upfront damage. My idea for Arakia would be something like you have maybe some extra spiders that spawn when you engage in lead pack the first time, so that you just ramp up the damage a bit faster and make the runs faster as a result. And then for Mundunugu, yeah, this build really needs single target damage. It is already a decent trash killer in 4-man, not a match for Nova right now, but eventually I guess Nova will get nerfed, eventually Meteor will get nerfed, and then Witch Doctor is going to be kind of up there again. It actually has seen some use before the advent of the two builds I just mentioned, as a especially non-seasoned trash killer. So on the high end, this actually starts popping off as well, and it can be used in forming groups for GR 150s. But when you try to farm this build or just play it a bit more casually in a solo push or so without going for like the ultimate insane density rift, then it also feels kind of weak. So this is really designed to be a build that needs the high density, that needs certain monster types to really succeed. But even if you do that, you fight the boss for like 7 minutes in a solo push on the high end, and it feels atrocious. So I think that really the main way to buff the Witch Doctor here a little bit, especially on the wudijo, which is the Helix gift set, and most of the other Helix gift sets did get a buff in Season 28, I think would be to boost the Manitou. Like the rune that gives you the single target damage for Spirit Barrage, and just make it go absolutely crazy so that you don't have these like 7-minute boss fights anymore, but maybe like 2 minutes. And this would also just allow this build to push higher because you have more time in the rift. And it would feel a lot better for farming content. So when you just run through those 110s, 115s or so, you know, you can actually kill a boss if the Manitou would deal like, let's say, triple the damage or something compared to now. And you wouldn't really have to worry all that much about going to a very low tier just so that you can kill the boss in not an awful amount of time. So that's my suggestion here. If there's ever going to be any buffs to Witch Doctors, I think, especially this season for wudijo, buffing Manitou would be an option. And then in general for Eric here, there could be maybe some kind of mechanic that I mentioned with some extra upfront damage that makes farming a bit more smooth. And then Witch Doctor would actually be in a pretty solid spot, at least for now. I think long term, we should also expect some other buffs, especially maybe for Garg builds. Even though I personally don't really enjoy the Garg build all that much, I think it's a good option for a future buff. Or maybe Zombie Bears. That's a build that I like a lot on Witch Doctor as well. It's Helltooth Zombie Bears. If that build was just like 15 or 20 tiers better than it is, it would be a really formidable farming build. It would be a strong pushing build. It would give Witch Doctor something that just works basically. And that would be really nice to have as well. Or maybe we're even gonna see some crazy stuff like an LOD Acid Cloud build or so. That has also been a pretty high request, I guess, from Witch Doctor enjoyers. Right now, the Witch Doctor doesn't really have any dedicated LOD build, so having like a dedicated new playstyle for LOD leaderboards especially would be a really good solution, and it would go a long way to give the Witch Doctor simply some better feeling builds. This is it for what I have to share here about the Witch Doctor in Season 28. It's not looking all that great compared to other classes, but in general, you're definitely going to feel the power level of the season theme. Season 28 is the highest power level ever, pretty much. And there's a lot of other like really useful buffs included, like CC immunity, passability, these kind of things that benefit an int class like Witch Doctor a lot. So there is something to look forward to. So that's it for this video and my feedback for the Witch Doctors. Maybe you're gonna get something. Otherwise, hope you like this one and see you guys next time.